and he
calls
compares them to
Blittler. He calls them Blittler.
Right. That's him comparing them to Nazis.
It's
Come on. Come on.
Are you kidding me? He's not calling them actually neo-Nazis. He's calling them black neo-Nazis, and that's different. Like, it doesn't make any sense. No, you retard. No.
Yes. Something analogous to a Nazi? No, of course not.
I'm reading, Tom. I'm reading.
Oh, my bad.
What?
How's the Vaush tour going?
There isn't really a Vaush tour. I mean, a lot of people have covered it, and a lot of people did not get my points, which is aggravating, but I guess that's part of... I guess there's also a Vaush sphere of influence, so I don't really know how to help people with that.
Did you watch me cover it?
God, no.
I was gonna say, I'm not, like, influenced by Vaush at all. I was gonna say, what were the issues with what I said?
I don't know what you said, but I guess the thing that I found most frustrating with, like, coverage, I don't know if you did that or not, so you could tell me. Like, I found it really interesting that people talk to me about, like, oh, you're justifying black separatism, or you're, like, defending black separatism, or all this or all that. And it's like literally my only critique around that specific topic was that I don't think it should be compared to Nazism, but you can still make a very salient critique against that. But no one is willing to engage with that argument whatsoever. And it's like very frustrating.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it would have been better. Well, so it seemed like at some point Vaush was making the point that, like, well, even... what if it actually is analogous to Nazism? And it didn't seem like you guys actually ended up getting into that. And I was that was, like, to me, like, the most important question. So I was disappointed that they didn't actually get gone over.
Yes, but Vaush likes to, like, shoehorn people into being able to calling them black separatists so he can like you know, discredit them. So
you're saying you don't think SoulBunni is actually a black separatist?
I don't know if she's a black separatist. I haven't spoken to her about the topic. I also don't, I would, like, as I said, there are many different types of black separatism. I'd have to really know what she wants and what that means for her. I'm not like, I have my critiques of black separatism. I actually saw a really interesting like Reddit Vaush post about how he should compare black separatism to Zionism, which I thought was, like, really interesting and would be, like, a super interesting conversation to have. I'd actually have a lot to say about that as a person who has a lot of things to say about Zionism. Or there were a few other examples that I found to be really interesting.
Well, so my frustration, because after listening to you talk to President Sunday, was people use Nazism as or Nazi, it's like a warning label to say this person is genocidal. Like, that is, like, it's like their beliefs lead to genocide or they are genocidal. Like, but you're pretty much just saying, like, they have dangerous beliefs that everybody should be wary of. And so you just put that label on them as this massive red flag to say, like, warning, warning, this person's a little out there. Don't listen to them. And so then in the President Sunday conversation where you're like, well, I mean, just because they're genocidal doesn't mean that we're going to compare them to Nazis.
No. So, I think that if you're going to use the term Nazism or Nazi to say this person is genocidal, I think that's low-key, like, anti-Semitism apologia. I'm not gonna lie. I think that's, like, incredibly...
Wait, why did you say no? That is what you were saying.
That's not what I meant. I know that I never would have said, oh, this person is maybe a little genocidal, but whatever. So
no, that's not what I said. That is not what I said. That is not what I said.
Sorry. Okay, then say it again. I'm sorry.
Okay, because I was about to say, you're literally making the argument right after saying no. Okay, I said that you would say, okay, just because this person is genocidal doesn't mean we would call them a Nazi. That's what I said.
Oh, okay. Yes, I apologize. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I didn't fully listen. I think that was the issue, or I thought I knew what you were gonna say.
Oh,
Yes. Yes, I think that like using Nazi or Nazism is just a shortcut for someone is potentially genocidal is like downplaying of Nazism. I think even the fact that Vaush literally admitted that he just calls anything that he doesn't like Nazism is like incredibly disturbing, especially with the rise of anti-Semitism generally in the world right now. It's very alarming that we're diluting what Nazism is to the point where there is, you know, the meme that liberals complain that like leftists call everything fascism and Nazism. Vaush literally admitted that he does the meme. And
yeah.
it's like, we can't dilute these words to mean nothing. You have to be more fucking specific than that. And like, if people want to conflate white nationalism or white separatism or like white supremacy with Nazism, then like I'll tolerate it, although it's not great, but like I tolerate it and I do it as well. But if you're just gonna call, I think this person is genocidal Nazi, that's like such a reduction of what Nazism is. It literally, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's disturbing to me. And it's also like, it's highly aggravating because it's downplaying of the atrocities of the Holocaust. It's downplaying of Nazism. It's so toxic in a disgusting way. And like, I had no idea that that's what people are doing. So I'm just like kind of disturbed. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
So why? Why would that be disturbing?
Why would that be disturbing? Because if we can't accurately identify, I see Nazism and like neo-Nazism is something that is like has proven itself to have awful outcomes. I literally don't call conservative Nazis. That is such a weird take, Michael. I think that if we dilute and we can't even tell what Nazism and neo-Nazism is and how we can call it out and truly understand how it's different from other ideologies, we can't truly be aware of that, which is significantly awful since Nazism has proven itself to be an incredibly genocidal, Holocaust-producing ideology. And people who are neo-Nazis not only usually, fuck, what was the last sentence I said?
People who self-identify as neo-Nazis?
Yeah, they might tell you that they're not interested in like perpetuating a second Holocaust, you know, like Mayo that says like, oh, I don't want to kill all Jewish people. I just want them all to go to Israel and leave like America alone. But it's like, I'm sorry, this is when I'm not going to take someone's words for it, you know?
Well,
Like,
so I think that's the point that everybody else is making, though, is where you keep saying, well, let's just ask them about their beliefs. Let's just talk to them about what they think. And we're all saying, no, they're like freaking neo-Nazis. We're not going to take their word for it. We're not going to listen to what they have to say. They're all just dog whistling the entire time and trying to sugarcoat what they actually believe.
and I think if someone is dog whistling the entire time, then you can call them out on it. But I don't know what you mean by dog whistling is. If you think black separatism is a dog whistle for genocide, then that's fine that you think that. But unfortunately, that would indicate a misunderstanding of what black separatism is meant to accomplish. And I think my strongest argument for that is like, and just to be clear, some black separatist movements are like, do have like problematic elements for sure, whatever. But I think the strongest differentiator there are two strongest differentiators between like neo-Nazism and black separatism. And the first one is that like Nazism has proven itself to be a genocidal thing. And with all due respect, black separatism projects have barely lifted off the ground ever. And I get people are saying, well, you want us to try that out? And which is why I think a comparison to Zionism would be much more appropriate. Because
so I don't even like, so saying that black separatism, like the goal isn't necessarily to genocide people. I don't think any groups
Absolutely.
like their goal is to genocide people. So even for like Mio, who I would definitely call a neo-Nazi, he genuinely believes that he would never genocide anybody. Like he genuinely believes that he would never do anything like that. He just doesn't like what Jewish people are doing, and he wants to somehow create a space for his people so that they are able to prosper. He just doesn't want the oppression anymore. It's all like the problem is that that's just how these things work out. That's how they always end up going. You can't kick out groups of people in areas or move them to other areas without genociding them. And so
So,
I don't
so,
think that black
sorry.
separatism means genociding people. I just think that it is something that ends up happening based on their ideology.
Okay, so two things. First of all, when we both understand that there's a difference between the Holocaust and genocide, right? Like the Holocaust is a type of genocide, but there are other types of genocide as well,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
Okay, so good.
Seems to be like the most
So
like atrocious one.
in recent modern history, for
Yes, of
sure,
course.
and
Yes, in modern
potentially
history.
ever.
Right?
Yeah. So let me think how I want to say this. So Mio might think that he's never going to genocide someone, but if you are going to force locate people out of out of an area that they live in, you're already genociding them. That is like one element of genocide, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so and that's something that he's absolutely okay with. When you say genocide, what you mean? He doesn't think he's going to put Jews in cages or
Yeah, he doesn't
whatever.
want to kill people. Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter because he's for the forced removal of huge demographics from one place to another, which is already genocide. Also, like what Mio thinks he's going to murder Jews or not is not really relevant to me, since he is subscribed to neo-Nazism, which, whether he likes it or not, does have certain implications.
So he wouldn't even say that he's for forced removal. He would say like, oh, well, we would give them like incentivization to go somewhere else, and we would make it better for them so that they're happier there, so that we can get them to cooperate peacefully and blah blah blah, which is literally the same exact crap that Professor Flowers said. Yes, I do.
You think he believes that?
Yeah.
Okay, then why does he subscribe to neo-Nazism if he believes that?
He would never call himself a neo-Nazi. I've never met anybody in my entire life who would actually call themselves a neo-Nazi.
Okay, so
Nick Fuentes
he has...
wouldn't call himself a neo-Nazi. He gets very upset with the implication.
Okay, so if I talk to Mio, he would disavow neo-Nazis.
Yes, you actually said to him one time, what kind of neo-Nazi are you? And he said, what? I'm not a neo-Nazi. Like, I'm not a neo-Nazi. And he got like very offended when you said that. Like, yeah, they very much disavow neo-Nazis. They think that they are much better than what we would call a neo-Nazi, but they don't even call themselves white nationalists. They're coping so far as to say that they're not even white nationalists. So
yeah, but they have the anti-Semitic like conspiracy element to it. So
right.
here's the thing, right? And this was the second biggest like indicator for me of like the difference between comparing black separatism to Nazism. And that's like the material conditions, right? So I think a big part of what makes Nazism or neo-Nazism what it is in compared to like other things, like if you compare Zionism right now to neo-Nazism, if anything, Israel is an ethno-state that is semi-theocratic, that oppresses like 3 million Palestinians. By all measures, Zionism and the Zionist project has done more to genocide a people than Mio ever will or ever probably will do, right? So, but we understand that the Zionist project came out of certain conditions that the neo-Nazism and Nazism never have and never had to rely on. Does it make the consequences okay? No. Does it make it so we can't criticize the choices people are making in like the ideologies that they have formed to try to battle those material conditions? No, of course not. We can, but to compare those two things is absurdist. And we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't compare Zionism to neo-Nazism, even though Israel has genocided more Palestinians than most current, like, nobody neo-Nazis.
Well, I think people do compare them to neo-Nazis fairly regularly. They're, like, especially as fascist as they've become over the last decade, people regularly compare them to neo-Nazis. But they're like the bigger problem is that like we like I said, we use Nazi as like the warning label to say these ideas are dangerous and can lead to something like what happened with the Holocaust. And
but I think what I'm saying is that there's Zionism as what it is on paper, and there's what happened out of the Zionist project that is Israel, right?
Yeah,
There was a way of performing Zionism that wouldn't have resulted in genocide. But Israel is a living proof that what they made out of Zionism became genocidal. But that doesn't mean that Zionism had to be genocidal. That doesn't mean Zionism is inherently genocidal. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like the example of like no ever communist project was done without massacring the people, you know? That's what I mean.
Well, so my issue though is that like bringing up the material conditions, we generally don't say because your life sucks, we're going to take you less seriously. We normally say like, hey, we're stigmatizing certain types of ideas so that they don't spread or become normalized. And as soon as we allow them to spread and become normalized with one group, we can't say, well, they're allowed to have these ideas because we don't really take them seriously. But you guys, when you do it, we're gonna get really upset with you and we're gonna call you neo-Nazis. But when they do it, like they're freaking black people. Like, come on, seriously, their material conditions are horrible. So.
Well, it's not just about that black people has material conditions that would never allow for black separatism. It's also that the rise of black separatism came from those material conditions, which is different than like a conspiracy about how Jews were controlling the world in 1930s. You know, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but even when we're talking about
the same way that Zionism came out of like a need to like create a safe space for Jews. Well, that's not the original. Like at some point Zionism became about, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I need to reread on the original origins of Zionism. But yeah,
like if we actually called them neo-Nazis, I would have an issue with that. Like, yes, if we actually called black separatists neo-Nazis, I would have a huge issue with that if they don't actually have the aspects. Well, he says that they're the same as neo-Nazis, and he compares them to neo-Nazis.
He calls them Blittler.
Right. That's him comparing them to Nazis. Like the BL in Blittler is for black. So he's saying you are like a black Hitler, right?
Yes, and what is a black Hitler? It's a neo-Nazi that perpetuated the Holocaust, but in blackface. It's
come on. Come on.
Are you kidding me?
No, it's like us calling people neo-Nazis is not us actually saying that they are that they're actual like German 1920s like people marching around in uniforms. It's us saying that they are analogous to a Nazi.
Okay, Tom, you cannot do the thing where you're like, oh, Mio is pretending and like he's just coping, but obviously he's a real neo-Nazi. But then be like, oh, Vaush is just comparing these black people to neo-Nazis. He's not calling them actually neo-Nazis. He's calling them black neo-Nazis, and that's different. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Why? That makes perfect sense to me. Why would that not make sense?
It sounds like a meaningless distinction you're making to let Vaush get away from the fact that he's literally calling people neo-Nazis because he doesn't understand black separatism.
Wait, all that matters is if it's actually analogous. That's again like how we started off with this. It matters if it's actually analogous. If it's actually analogous, then the rhetoric is apt.
Okay, Tom, do you think it's appropriate? Okay, so is your distinction that you think you're just comparing Mio to a neo-Nazi? Because you call him a neo-Nazi.
No, neo-Nazi is not a thing. Neo-Nazi is the analogy to a Nazi.
No, you retard. No.
Yes, that is what it is.
Tom. Neo-Nazism. A member of an organization similar to the German Nazi Party relating to neo-Nazis or Nazism.
You just called me a retard. You realize that, right? You just called me a retard.
Am I not allowed to do that?
Well, not when right after you're going to say exactly what I said. No, if you're going to go read the definition and it's going to say pretty much something analogous to a Nazi. No, of course not.
I'm reading, Tom. I'm reading.
Oh, my bad.
Okay. Neo-Nazism comprises the post-World War II militant social political movement that seeks to revive and reinstate Nazi ideology. Neo-Nazism is an ideology that seeks to revive the Nazi Party, that seeks to reinstall the Third Reich. It's not a made-up thing. It's not a comparison to Nazism. It's an actual thing.
Okay,
Neo-Nazism
so as long
is its
as
own. It's an ideology predicated on Nazism.
So you're saying that as long as Nick Fuentes says he doesn't want to revive the Nazi Party, doesn't want to do anything similar to them, and he says that he is not a neo-Nazi, that means that he's not actually a part of the organization called neo-Nazi, and therefore we should not call him a neo-Nazi.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's what I felt like you were saying.
No.
Because... Okay, Tom, we can do this. We're so close.
There's no way you thought that's what I was saying. I was saying that it just means that it's analogous. I'm saying that Nick Fuentes is a neo-Nazi because his beliefs are analogous to the Nazis, and any sort of organization that he creates will be analogous to the Nazis.
Okay, but that's not what a neo-Nazi is.
Okay, that is how people use it. Yes, that is what we are calling, when we call Nick Fuentes a neo-Nazi, that is what we are saying. We are saying that that his beliefs are analogous to Nazis, in any organization, in any political movement that he ever creates will be exactly like the Nazis.
Okay, so do we agree that being a neo-Nazi is just, can we agree that a loose definition for neo-Nazi has to do with genociding certain minority demographics?
It has to do with beliefs that will likely lead to genociding certain demographics.
Okay, great. That is a much better distinction. Thank you. Okay. So if that's the case, I don't think that's analogous to Nazism. I just think Nazism had beliefs that led to genociding minorities, and neo-Nazism has beliefs that might lead to genociding minorities, and we call it neo-Nazism because Nazism was a thing. It's like a political party that existed in the past. So it's like conservatism and neoconservatism.
Right. I understand. And so when Nick Fuentes has beliefs that are going to lead to similar outcomes as the Nazis, we call him a neo-Nazi in like a conceptual sense.
Yes, but in the conceptual, so you think the conceptual sense is a comparison?
Yes, that is what we're saying. We're saying that you are like so the problem is that he wraps wait. Yes, he's wrapping everything in like sugarcoating. And then we're like, no, we're not going to let you get away with that. We are going to call what you're actually doing what it actually is. And so we're going to call him a neo-Nazi because he's trying to get away with not calling himself a neo-Nazi. We're going to call him a white nationalist because he's trying to get away with not calling himself a white nationalist.
The reason why I don't think it's a comparison, but it's not a comparison, is because those beliefs, while moving or like slightly changing, are predicated on the same beliefs that Nazis had. So like conspiratorial beliefs about Jewish people, conspiratorial unscientific beliefs about white superiority and white power, and so on and so forth. That's why, like, tankies, for example, I wouldn't call them neo-Nazis because they have certain beliefs, like the communists, like Soviet Russia, that would also lead to certain outcomes. But like, so I don't think it's a comparison because sure, Nick Fuentes might have quote unquote new evidence for like IQ differences between white people and black people, but at the end of the day, he's still leaning on the same principles of Nazism. It's just that he can't be a Nazi because Nazis are literally not around anymore. He's a neo-Nazi. So for me, it's just not a comparison. It's like it's a direct continuation of Nazism, but I guess it's more of a semantic argument.
Yes, no, you're right. And we actually, most of the time, we don't even say neo-Nazi. We just say Nazi.
We do, yes.
Yes, okay. So now, for black separatists, same thing. And now we're calling them Blitler instead.
Okay, so I think this is a really good way of exemplifying my point. So we explained that there are certain things that lead neo-Nazis, that like, conspiratorialism over Jewish people, like differences, like scientific differences between white people and black people, and so on and so forth. Black separatism, even for elements that have to do with like anti-Semitism, are still like the ideas of black separatism, even if you say they might lead to negative outcomes, and you can argue about that, are not predicated on the same building stones as Nazism or neo-Nazism. That's why I don't think you can.
I completely agree with this. Even black nationalism. So I have an issue with people conflating black nationalism with black separatism and then saying that black separatism somehow is inherently this like Nazi-like or movement, when it's not inherently. It just so happens to be that way the majority of the time. But you can be these things without being like a Nazi.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I think that you shouldn't be okay with like the Blitler. I don't think it's a comparison, and I don't think it's appropriate. And you said like if he was actually calling them neo-Nazis, then fine. But he's not. He is calling them neo-Nazis. He's just saying that they're black neo-Nazis. But the point stands, they're not neo-Nazis. Even if they were supporting some other genocidal thing, which they're not, and I don't want to feed into that, but even if theoretically they were, that still doesn't make them neo-Nazis. So it's like, not only is it not a comparison, it's not even an apt one.
Well, so in the case of like the entire movement, I agree, like by definition, sure, that's not the case. Just as white nationalism isn't necessarily white separatism. White supremacy. Those aren't necessarily the same things. The words mean different things, and you don't inherently have to be a white supremacist to be a white nationalist. That's just generally how it works out most of the time. Yes,
for sure.
So when we have people like Professor Flowers giving very extreme rhetoric about moving people out of their homes, talking about how they could never suffer enough to actually get equal with white people, and that they would be justified in no matter what they did to white people. I think that somebody like that, then adding in, you know, the historical context of black separatism and black nationalism and the anti-Semitism that generally comes with that, in the fact that they do a lot of times feel like it is Jewish people who are oppressing them and are the ones who created all of the racial castes and all of this crap. When you have somebody like SoulBunni defending people like Professor Flowers without ever at any point calling her out, it sounds really bad. And then if we, it's like,
then Vaush takes advantage of that and smears all black people who might not want to chastise Professor Flowers.
sure,
And wait, let me finish. And like, I agree with you, but the thing that matters is Vaush says he uses people who don't chastise Professor Flowers as belittler. He's okay with that. Even if you don't chastise it, you don't chastise Mio, that doesn't make you Hitler.
well, so
that's
where
my issue, that he does that.
Well, where I was going with this is that say Nick Fuentes does put out a video where he's talking about, like, you know, Jewish people being in disproportionate positions of power, and then talking about how, like, everybody, you know, black people commit crimes at disproportionate rate, and then he's talking about how, like, everybody hates white people and that there's this revenge that's building up in the United States to kill white people, and that we have to do something to stop this, and blah blah blah, right? And then afterwards, you're sitting there going, man, he's a freaking neo-Nazi. And I call into your show and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. He had some good points though, right? He was saying that, like, like, black people are really in disproportionate positions of power, right? Like, it wasn't that bad, right? Like, the Jewish people do represent a disproportionate number of people in positions of power,
and
right?
And also, I'm not going to talk about Professor Flowers or even SoulBunni, but I will tell you this. When Vaush says that he's fine saying anyone who doesn't condemns Professor Flowers is now comparable or should be called belittler, I think it should be very easy for you to say that's insane, even if you want to call Professor Flowers belittler, which I still don't think that you should.
I would say that's insane unless you are interacting with Professor Flowers in a friendly manner, or talking with Professor Flowers in a friendly manner, or talking about Professor Flowers in a friendly manner. Then I would say, yeah, you probably need a pretty strong caveat to that. Just as if I was going to talk well about Nick Fuentes and say a bunch of nice things about him, I should probably caveat that as well.
Oh yeah, like Destiny does, for sure. Fuck. Okay.
I think Destiny did. Like, he would say that Nick Fuentes was a neo-Nazi, that he thought he had bad beliefs, that they disagreed on everything. Like, he did seem to say those things. Whereas as far as SoulBunni goes, it's literally just defense of Professor Flowers.
I think wait, you even watched the whole video. The fact that you watched the whole video and you think most of the video is a defense of Professor Flowers is very interesting.
I didn't say that. Wait, I didn't say that.
Then what do you mean defense of Professor Flowers? Most of the video wasn't even about Professor Flowers.
I didn't say most of the video was a defense of Professor Flowers. I'm saying that I've heard her talk about Professor Flowers numerous times, and I think she was even on screen with Professor Flowers once before, and literally never has, like, as far as I know, condemned Professor Flowers, talked about these issues, nothing. It's only a defense of Professor Flowers anytime she talks about Professor Flowers, as though any stigmatization that it heads in Professor Flowers' direction is unjustified all the time. And that, like, it's kind of gross to do so. Professor Flowers should be stigmatized in a similar manner to somebody like Nick Fuentes.
Oh, I don't think that's true. I think Professor Flowers did a very bad job at the debate that she went into. And I also think that she has done a bad job, like being able to clarify her positions afterwards. But if I understand her positions correctly, no, I think that comparing her to Nick Fuentes is ludicrous, especially because she's not even a black separatist. So that's funny.
I think Nick Fuentes did a really bad job at explaining his cookie analogy with Cookie Monster, and I think he did a bad job at explaining it all afterwards. But I think that like it doesn't make sense to compare him to neo-Nazis now.
I don't know what that means.
Okay. Professor Flowers had like a ton of chances and a ton of videos that she put out after the Vaush thing. She had a ton of different conversations with different people. It only ended up being her doubling down over and over, except for one instance where she talked to President Sunday, and it sounded like she started to make sense. It sounded like a lot of what she was saying actually was just a confused misrepresentation, and that we all kind of took what she said out of context, and she just said it poorly. But then she went and started saying it all again in much more hyperbolic language afterwards. And so it seems just like Nick Fuentes, where he'll, depending on who he's talking to, will say very different things to coat his language in what it is that's necessary for the moment.
Okay, so you think she's malicious? That's the thing.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Then we just have two very different interpretations of that. That's fine. Okay. I am tired.
Okay. I'm just saying, I guess, wrap it up then.
No.
I think, like, somebody sounding like they are not stigmatizing Professor Flowers should get stigmatized. And then somebody sounding like they are defending that person not stigmatizing Professor Flowers, that person will likely also get stigmatized in turn, just as if I came out in defense of Nick Fuentes in some way, I would likely get stigmatized pretty heavily. Yeah.
Do you think I should be stigmatized for the way that I talk about Professor Flowers?
I don't know much of what you said about Professor Flowers. It's more so about the SoulBunni video. I think that from what you said during the conversation, and then from what I saw on Twitter afterwards, it sounds like you're saying you just don't know enough about the Professor Flowers scenario or about like black separatism to have a strong position. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. No. Have you not heard the first conversation I've had with Vaush?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, I think there was a definite like misunderstanding and misrepresentation of Professor Flowers' positions for sure. I actually started a series about that, and I even posted a video about it too. And then I ended up deciding against that. And I did my Black Separatism interview series instead. But my original idea was to do a video about Professor Flowers. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the reason why I don't talk about Professor Flowers is because I feel like this space never got her why she felt like things were taken out of context, and why a lot of people that defend her feel like things were taken out of context. And I don't really trust people in this space to be able to understand the argument, so I don't bother with it. Basically, I think talking about Professor Flowers with how badly she did in that discussion is just not worthwhile. I don't think the conversation should stick there, and I think we should talk about the core main issues rather than focusing on her. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like you keep strawmanning it when you say like that discussion, whereas it's like a total of like 10 videos that we're talking about where she continuously professes the same things, but then says she's not professing those things. And I don't know how many
Watch.
times I can assume somebody's just being misunderstood before I decide that they actually believe the things that they're saying.
No, for sure. But I guess for me, like I've watched 4 videos, although I haven't watched the conversation with him, so I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Because all I found was just Vaush talking over it, and I couldn't be bothered. And I do know something happened in a conversation with him, but like I watched her and Vaush, and then I watched like 3 videos of her talking about the situation with Vaush, and then a few tweets and other things.
Yeah. Well,
So that
so let me.
is like my context.
So I, at the time, just watched her stuff with Vaush, and then her conversation, I think, with him. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, maybe she's just being misunderstood. So recently, I was working on a video essay that I'm actually getting back into now because of the SoulBunni video. But I had kind of like pushed it off to the side just because I didn't have enough there, and it wasn't a full video. But part of it was that there's a section of the internet that continues to defend Professor Flowers. And so I start to go over the history of Professor Flowers. And there was a period in researching this when I saw President Sunday talk to her in his conversation. And I thought, oh my goodness, I was totally wrong. I never saw this before. She explains it so much better here, which in reality, he explains it and then says, do you agree with this? And she says, oh, yes, of course. And then starts to explain everybody strawmanning her and harassing her and all of this other stuff unfairly. And so I thought, okay, that's weird. All right, that's fine. But then her other follow-up videos from this not only mischaracterize President Sunday and then lie about him, but also she then doubles down on the position that President Sunday was trying to get her out of. And so, and then she does it again in another video after that. And so, yeah, at that point I was like, oh, okay, crap. Like, I guess this is just like the President Sunday part is an anomaly. And then I'll take the larger picture at its word.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I know a lot of people had that way of handling it, and like I can see why that's the case. I don't mean to strawman you, by the way, so I'm sorry if you felt that way.
Okay.
I have nothing else to say.
Okay.
This was a really chill talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like talking to you. Also, I guess I could tell you publicly that I know we're not friends or anything, but I really appreciate you talking to me. You've always been really like kind, and you've never like treated me like disrespectfully or rudely. And that's something that like is really hard for me to find in this space, because a lot of people really don't like me very much, and they have a very like shitty attitude towards me. So I really appreciate you always been like that. And I know it's not like personally towards me, but it means a lot to me because I don't get that from a lot of other people. So I just wanted to like thank you and like do that publicly as well.
Yeah, no problem. And I appreciate you saying that. I have also numerous times said that I think people are really unfair to you, and I think this place is super sexist, and that they just happen to take women their disagreements with women much harder than they do their disagreements with men. So I say this pretty regularly. That doesn't mean that people's disagreements with you are unjust or anything all the time. I'm just saying that, yes, I do think people end up being unfair.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Also, yes, Benjamin, this is a confession. Tom, marry me.
Maybe one day we'll get there.
Okay. Have a good night.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye.
Is it for a green card? Yeah, probably. That's the only way that would make sense. That's the only way somebody would want to marry me. All right. Tom, look at you. No reactionary content tonight. Yeah, nothing reactionary. Nice, dude. It's just nothing but a stream of never-ending call-ins. That was actually dope. I enjoy it when the night goes like that. And they were good calls, and it wasn't the same thing over and over and over. We even like went back and forth from MLD to Bite Karen to MLD to Bite Karen to Bite Karen to what was the relationships, long versus short term, to Vaush. So we had a good finale at the end.